Hello and welcome back. I'm going to be honest, I have always stood on the side of the fence that thought spirituality and most of its practices were a bit woo-woo. Excluding a couple, I see the power in meditation, I see the power in mindfulness, but both of those for me, it was really about the power of focus and being present and shutting off that ADHD part of my brain that's running at 100 miles an hour. When it comes to things like astrology, I've always been very averse to it. And not only because of the lack of scientific backing, but also because I'm a Gemini. And I was asked a lot when I started getting some followers on social media what my star sign was. And I was really reluctant to share it because on quite a few occasions in my life, I've told someone that I'm a Gemini and it's been met with a negative reaction. Or they've told me something that it means about my personality or negative traits. And yeah, I guess that makes me a bit uncomfortable. Who is someone who's never met me to tell me they know something negative about my personality before having a conversation, right? Just on the day that I was born. All of that being said, I do see some huge growth in one of my closest friends who is my guest today's partner. My guest today is Susi Bastviken, and she is a spirituality practitioner. She is a holistic coach and she empowers women in particular in journeys through just finding yourself, unblocking past traumas, pregnancy and things like that. So today, her and I have a really bare and honest conversation about potentially my own traumas, how they've affected my views on relationships, and how spirituality can undoubtedly be used to help improve your mental state of mind. That is one thing that I am converted and convinced on. So take what you want from this episode that you find helps you. And for anything that you don't feel is true or doesn't resonate with you, then leave that behind. As Susi says in this episode, take what you need and let it help you. I really hope you enjoy the episode. And as always, if I could please ask you one favor, whatever platform you're on, could you drop a like, a follow, or a subscribe? It makes me way happier than it should, and that's probably an issue that I should address as well. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to hear what you think. Susi, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You are very into your spirituality. You're one of the most emotionally aware people that I think I've met, and straight away, even having only met you a couple of times, we've had some pretty deep conversations, and you bring out a sort of safe space to talk to. And I feel comfortable sharing things with you, and I know I'm not alone in that because it's your job. You have a lot of women that look up to you and a lot of women that look to you for guidance. Why do you think that is?
Oh, thank you so much. That I feel that. I appreciate that. I was reflecting on, of course, spirituality today, and for many years I've been thinking about these topics, but I believe that we all have certain qualities that we bring here when we incarnate as souls, and I believe one of mine is just what you're saying, holding space. And actually just that very specific energy of allowing people to bring just who they are and for that to be okay. And I love that so much because it opens up for incredible conversations, as you say, with people who I have met a few times, but then we can go straight there because they can feel that too. And that to me describes spirituality, but it also describes energy. Because it's something you pick up on without us necessarily, talking about it beforehand, like, let's go into a deep conversation. It's just the feeling that you get. And then we both allow it to go there, right? And, yeah.
When you say as souls, when you're carnated with something, then you have that. Does that kind of mean that you're born with that, or is it something that if you struggle to have deep conversations that you can learn?
Oh, definitely. I think both the things that you're saying is right. I think well, I believe, this is just my perspective on life and spirituality, that we are born with certain qualities and a certain incarnation, a certain maybe route in life, or something that we're here to do or change or, bring to light. And I believe that some people have maybe those qualities more naturally, but it also has a lot to do with trauma. How open we are, how closed we are. I have definitely been always a very emotional person. If you look at videos of me as a child, I'll be there looking at a video or something and crying, like being all in. So for me, it's always come natural, but I know that many people have a lot of childhood trauma, as we all have childhood trauma to a certain degree, but especially around emotions in the world that we have grown up in, is that emotions aren't really welcome to be expressed, especially for men or guys or boys. And that can block you from being able to really go to that space of vulnerability or even feel things, which is something that I know is really painful for a lot of people, and something that I'm, of course, very passionate about. Like, for example, with my partner, helping him really get to those spaces so where he can open up. And just because I also know that it's so healthy on a physical health level, because it's connected, right? Energy, emotions, physical health, mental health, for sure. And they're all placed together. And there's ways you can unblock yourself and always take a step. It's definitely far out of the comfort zone for many, having vulnerable conversations. But every time you do, or I can ask you actually, how do you feel afterwards?
Warm. Often more connected. It's rare, and I can only think of a couple of occasions where I have opened up and been vulnerable and then regretted it.
Yeah.
For the other 90% of the time, it's always something that has made me feel better. It makes me feel more at peace.
And I think sometimes we also get what I like to call an emotional or a vulnerability hangover. When we feel like we've opened up too much, but maybe we afterwards want to close off again and we don't feel safe and we regret it. And sometimes that can happen in my teenage years, or when I was a bit younger, it would happen more with, going out and alcohol and things like that. And then you open up to someone and then, oh my gosh, it's actually both the alcohol hangover, but also a vulnerability hangover. But it can also happen other times. For example, if we are posting something online and we feel so passionate and it feels so right, but then afterwards we feel this big contraction and it feels scary. And it has a lot to do with our fears also. And our comfort zones. Yeah.
I've definitely posted something on social media, this year, and just been riddled with anxiety about putting it out there. You mentioned unblocking.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah. One of my other big passions in life is unblocking and bursting through all of the limitations that we have inside of us. And bringing it back to kind of the spiritual or the soul journey perspective, I also believe that we have certain things that we're here to overcome within our personalities or ourselves, and that we are kind of in this perfect design with who we have as parents, as siblings, where we grow up in our families, and it often puts you in specific situations that you are in because you are meant to overcome this specific thing. And I believe that we can unblock and overcome many things. Often we carry some core wounds throughout life, but we can definitely take a lot of steps in healing and overcoming. And that is something that I do with myself in the day-to-day life. Have a very deep core wound of just not feeling good enough. And it triggers me in the day-to-day in my work with a negative comment or with something not working out that I have tried to create or something that doesn't sell well or go my way, then instantly that's the button that's pressed. And that's how I love to work with energy, spirituality, and unblocking, is in those very small moments in your day-to-day when you feel annoyance, trigger, fear. That's where you know that, oh, this is an opportunity to unblock. And that's what the situation is trying to get you to evolve.
So the first step is identifying an emotion and investigating the cause.
Yeah. And not being afraid of triggers. And often also looking at things that keep repeating themselves. Patterns. Sometimes we have the same experience in 10 different situations and we're like, why is this happening again? With different people. Sometimes I work with people who, for example, have a specific experience in their work and then they're like, okay, I'm going to quit my job, get a new job. But without maybe going to the root cause or the core wound. And then the same situation happens in the next job. And they're like, how is that possible that happens again? And then you know that you have to look one layer deeper to see and to unblock what's actually going on.
Do you think that having trauma and not unblocking it can cause you to attract the same situation?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's when we come back to energy and things, vibration, really. The law of attraction, we attract things. There are spiritual laws that govern the universe, and I think that we attract it with a good purpose, even though it feels so painful or annoying or impossible to overcome when it happens again. But I like to see, even with the really hard stuff, that it's happening for you, for your greatest evolution and for your greatest growth. Because when you overcome or unblock and you really heal something, then you start to see the world differently and you start to attract different situations. And that's kind of your own proof that you have managed to go through that very specific thing.
And I've experienced that.
Mm.
And when it comes to spirituality, I'm definitely starting from a position where I do sit in thinking a lot of it is woo-woo. So to speak, right? I have a lot of skepticism about a lot of it.
Yeah.
And for example, when this social media thing started blowing up for me, everyone wanted to know what my star sign was.
Yeah, of course.
And I would get comments after comments of people trying to guess my star sign based off these random factors of me and people messaging me just wanting to know. And I didn't want to reveal it because, again, I've not been too involved in the world, but when we have discussed it, it's generally been met a bit negatively.
Yeah.
And then we announced, well, I posted a happy birthday post or something like that. And everyone was like, I knew it. He's a Gemini. Get it.
Oh, that's so good.
So I don't like feeling that my traits or how I behave or interact with people are predefined by the point in the calendar year which I was born. I like to feel like I have more control over my life. But I know there's so much truth in so much of what you're talking about when it comes to unpacking trauma and the vibrations, even though I wouldn't have explained it like that myself previously. I know it's true. I know that if I'm in a negative mindset and I haven't solved some issues that have been bothering me, that I'm going to keep attracting that same kind of issue over and over again until I unpack it. Is it harder to work with someone like me who perhaps comes from a more skeptical start point?
No, not necessarily. I kind of like it. A healthy challenge for me. No, but I love that because then I can talk about it in a way where we just break it down to very grounded day-to-day life experiences. And for me, for example, astrology I love astrology, But I also remember seeing astrology the way that you're seeing it now and describing it now and thinking that impossible that can make any sense. But then using it as a tool over the years, because it's a methodology, right? It's a spiritual methodology, just like human design and a lot of others tools that we use. And so for me, I see it as more of a tool of getting to know yourself on a deeper level. And it means that this information is ancient. Astrology is very, very old. And you can use it more as a tool to see what resonates. So Gemini, for example, your sun is in Gemini. And that has certain specific traits, and it has also what's called the shadow side, so kind of like good and bad qualities. And then you can see what resonates for you with those traits and use that in your life if you want, or you can just leave it. So that's how I like to work with skepticism. And I always say, even when I do anything that I do in my work, like take only what resonates for you, what's helpful for you, leave the rest. Because that, yeah, I don't believe in trying to persuade or talk people into anything or like pushing any worldview on anyone. I think it's so healthy that we have different ways of seeing the world. And it's funny because I thought that when I was single, before I met my current partner, I thought that I was looking for a guy who was really into all of these things and the same things like me. I thought it had to be super conscious and spiritual, and
you met one of the most emotionally closed off men that's ever walked the planet.
Exactly. I met the most rational, logical, practical, men, and turns out that was just what I needed.
He's a testament to your work, because I have known your partner Dale for 14 years. We've lived together in multiple places. We've traveled the world together. And in the earlier days, we struggled to connect on a deeper level. We were friends through practicality and mutual interests of traveling, and we had a good time. We made each other laugh, but we were never able to open up to each other. Now, there are other factors at play, like we were young, we didn't understand what toxic masculinity was, and both of us were exhibiting signs of it. And I also, I guess, didn't create the safe space for him, and I didn't even understand what a safe space was at that point.
No.
But since he's been with you, it's been 2-3 years now?
3 years.
3 years?
More.
He's changed so much. And he is now able to exhibit and give that safe space more. He's able to talk about his own feelings a lot more as well. So let's use him as a case study.
Okay, great. Good case study.
How did you go about bringing that out of him?
Oh my gosh, I was terrified, right? Because I was so scared that he wouldn't like me for who I truly was. And which is, I think, very common in dating, right? You want to hold back and you want to show your best sides, or not just your best sides, but the sides that you think that they will like. And I had done a lot of work on myself going into this dating with him. And I decided, okay, this time I'm going to just do my very best every single time, just be myself and see if he likes me for who I am. Okay, let's move forward. If he doesn't, this time I'm not going to try and like adapt and change to make something work. Also, Dale's astrological sign is Cancer. So it's one of the most emotional signs. It's a water sign. It's all about home, family, nurturing. And for example, I shared that with him. And at first he was a bit like,
Doesn't fit.
Yeah. But then I think he has understood that, wow, his core values are that family, home, safety, being the nurturer. And from the start, I think I had just been super honest with him, and honest to the degree where you maybe become uncomfortable often. And that's what I believe in, really radical honesty in life, because I think that that's where we need to go because I want to create something real, a relationship that is real and that is so deep. The roots go so deep if we're going to be able to grow really, really far and grow together. So it's always been about those honest conversations and not being afraid to hold back or to, make other people uncomfortable, including him. So we have triggered each other a lot, and that's how we also have grown a lot together. And even though he doesn't fully understand what I do, I think, I truly feel like he accepts me and loves me and supports me in every single way possible that he can. And it was also a process for me to fully embrace who he is and his whole world. And I saw myself trying to be like pulling him in, like, come into my world, do this work with me, take this course with me, like become this spiritual guy. And I'm like, no, stop this. You can do with your girlfriends. And if he wants to, then he will. And so, that process, like, I want to do this. No, I'm going to stop myself. And then conversation by conversation, moment by moment, experience by experience, I saw that he just connected more with his emotions. And then we would have really deep conversations. I think I would also ask him questions where maybe people before would stop themselves, like about family and about, we talked a lot about his upbringing and things like that. And he would allow himself to cry and to experience that was okay. And I think that helped to allow himself to keep going there whenever it felt needed or natural for him, instead of stopping it.
I don't think he's had that before.
No.
I think, without going into too personal of details, but we do know quite a lot about each other's lives, and both of us have fairly similar traumas with parents, divorce, relationships, and vulnerability with parents as well.
Yeah.
Do you think that he just needed to be offered that space in order to embrace that in himself?
I hope so. Who knows if we didn't meet, how he would go on his journey with some other person, but I believe that, we kept bumping into each other, different parts of the world. So I think that we also were meant to meet at this time in life. And I don't know. Maybe he would have gone on a spiritual journey with you, if not.
Maybe
that would have been journey.
That would have been the blind leading the blind. If people are listening and they're resonating with some of what you're saying about unblocking, about addressing these past traumas in repetitive behavioral patterns in their life, where do you start?
We start with talking about what hurts the most, what bothers you the most. Because often we have a few different things going on. And sometimes clients come to me when I do coaching, for example, and it's like a whirlwind, just overwhelm of everything, because everything is kind of intertwined in a big knot. And then I like to start with what bothers you the most. And sometimes untangling that thing leads to just a general lowering of all the anxiety and chaos and overwhelm that's going on. And then often a lot of the other things resolve themselves.
Pulling at one string.
Yeah.
Slowly unravel.
Yeah. And often what brings you to book a session turns out being something very different from what we end up working with. So just allow it to flow naturally. But most people know what they want to, or what bothers them and where they feel more blocked.
You can think you do. So
I
went to therapy for a little while at 25, and I went because I had just run away from another relationship and it was becoming a pattern for me. I felt very lost at that point in my life without direction. I didn't see a positive future for me at that point. I was in a dark tunnel, couldn't see a light at the end, and I didn't know which direction to walk in.
No.
I went to therapy wanting to dig at why I felt like I needed to keep running away from romantic partners.
Hmm.
And the therapist just kept digging at my dad. It was just like, talking about my relationship with my father. I was like, I don't need to talk about my father. I need to talk about my girlfriend that I've just left.
Yeah.
But the more she pulled at it, the more that I started to realize that, you know, there were other strings in this knot, as you refer to, which were all tangled up. And I've mentioned this before because my parents went through a really messy divorce from 12 till 17. And I have always been of the mindset that is more common than staying together in this day and age. Everyone's parents get divorced. It wouldn't have had a big deal on me because it's literally normal. But that in itself is something that's come from that, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to someone very recently who asked me, have you got examples of long-term happy relationships in your close family life? I thought about it and I was like, no, I don't. There's not really any good examples on that front. They've all been a bit disastrous for one reason or another.
Yeah.
And perhaps that was why my therapist was pulling at this, was the relationships that I had in the past was, as you were saying earlier, is perhaps giving me that energy so that I am then attracting the same thing because I haven't unboxed that trauma.
Yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting to see how even quite young, that age when your parents divorced, you put on protection, right? Protection in the story being that this is normal. This happens to everyone. And then that becomes your reality. Not just the reality that you see in other relationships, in other families, but also what you start creating in your own life. And that is a very good example of a very strong belief. And beliefs, they shape how we see everything. And it always comes back to our parents. Work a lot with relationship with parents because they show us the world, right? They are these characters and they are master teachers in our life, for the good, for the bad. And I think no matter how good or maybe not so good parent that you are, there will always be childhood trauma from upbringing that we are on a journey to heal after growing up. And I also have divorced parents. And I remember right after the divorce, I also had that worldview, like, no relationship ever works. And I also had boyfriend after boyfriend, and just after a while I was just over it. Like, this just ends. And the exact similar thing. So for me, it's also a huge healing journey with relationships, love, partnership. Actually, it's a lot of healing to do with the heart and a lot of grief. And do you feel like you have grieved the divorce?
I never felt like I needed to.
No.
At the time, I don't know why. I didn't feel like it was, the divorce itself was a painful thing for me. The environment that I was in was definitely a painful thing for me, with the toxicity in the household. And both of my parents are lovely people, but they just weren't aligned, and they were doing their best to keep it together for the family when, they shouldn't really have ever been together in the first place.
No.
They both have partners now which complement their own personalities so much better. They're both much happier. But yes, the situation that I was in wasn't pleasant. And I don't think it was good for me in my formative years, because I very quickly worked out that I could use it to my advantage. I could fall out with dad and go to mum, and I could fall out with mum and go to dad.
Yeah.
I could be a little shit at school because I could blame it on my divorced parents.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, I recognize myself so much in that.
Do you think I need to be grieving on that?
Then, well, I wanted to say yes, but I could never tell you what you need to do. But it might come up at some point in your life, just a big sorrow. And I always think about Chinese medicine, actually, when it comes to grief, because it's connected with different organs in the body and different emotions. And grief has to do with the lungs. And why I'm saying this is because I think a year ago or 2 years ago had like a lung infection and had so many emotions coming up, like so much grief. And it just felt like old grief that was in my body, just unprocessed. And not that I have been really blocked off with my emotions ever, but sometimes we just purge out these emotions. And it's kind of, we try to be logical and like, this is because of that, and now I'm sad because of that. But it's just coming out because it's been there for a while, and emotions just want to flow through. And at some point, maybe it will come up for you as well. It could be something else pushing the button, but then the feelings can come up. And as you're saying, okay, maybe back then that it was more, it could be so many emotions, right? It can also be a relief when parents get divorced, or it can be crushing and devastating because it's very natural for a child to want the two people they love the most to love each other as well. And when you feel like they don't, then it can feel like everything breaks apart. But as you say, also a child to some degree picks up on the fact that they're so unhappy. So it's conflicting emotions. And yeah, I think you will know best when it's time to process it more, look into it more, or if you feel kind of resolved, it can go in the ebb and flow.
I think it definitely rears its head.
Yeah.
In a lot of my current, not I say current, but recent relationships, where when I feel something that is positive, maybe some form of love or some form of attachment or desire to be more vulnerable and connected with someone, I feel like I have to withhold it.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have to withhold it because it's not going to be forever. And I don't want to... The common phrase for it is love bombing, right? Where you tell someone all of these positive emotions that you're feeling for them, and then you take them away.
I've never heard that expression before.
I think it's used, it's a current trending phase along with gaslighting and everything else, where it's used generally by toxic men to get what they want from a woman. So that's the label and the connotation that it has.
Okay.
For me, it's not that I would be expressing it falsely. It would be my truth in that moment. I'm just scared in myself from my past experiences and perhaps all of this trauma from other relationships in my family, that I don't want to do that. I don't want to tell someone all of these positive things that I'm feeling if in a month I'm not going to feel that way anymore and I'm going to be leaving, because I don't want to cause that pain. Yeah,
exactly. It's terrifying, right? Love, especially in the beginning. Taking one step, not knowing how the other one truly feels. And then, of course, always that looking into the future and looking maybe a bit too far. And worrying about whether it's going to work out or not. And I don't know, sometimes I think people come into your life a certain period of time and then it can naturally come to a close, but that fear can come and take over and we want to just escape. Sometimes maybe that is your pattern. Like,
yeah,
it's in the nervous system. It's like flight. And you're very aware of it now, so
I'm unpacking it. I think, and it's something that I'm unpacking more in the last year or so than I have before. And I have someone that I talk to about this stuff very honestly as well.
Yeah.
And what you were saying, having a relationship built entirely on honesty. If you're not entirely honest, then you're not going to be ever realizing what was fully right for you, right? You're going to be realizing what was right for this facade that you kind of put up. But on top of that, you're not going to unpack and understand what you really want or what you really feel.
No.
And when you say that I'm very aware of it now, it's only because I have spoken about this probably once a week with a different person every week for like the last few months.
Yeah.
And every time that I talk about it, I get a little bit of their perspective, and then it helps me understand my perspective a bit more. Like from this one straight away, you said, have you grieved that? Like, I'm now going to be thinking, over it, how did I really feel in that time? Because I think of how it actually was, how the household was, how my behavior was in school. But I was like, how did I feel in that moment? Like, I don't know how I felt at that time.
And have you ever felt heartbroken?
It's a funny one. I had two situations which I can't call relationships, and I feel like I can't call love because I was so young. I had a girlfriend for about 3 days when I was 10 years old. And I remember seeing her in class and thinking, she is gorgeous. Like, that's and then one of her friends came up to me on the playground or somewhere after class and said, this girl really fancies you. Will you be her boyfriend? And I thought it was a practical joke. I thought I was being teased. I thought they caught me looking at her. So I was like, no, wouldn't do that. And then someone else, another one of her friends came up and said a similar sort of thing. And I was like, oh, is this real? Like, because if I've already said no once, like, is this real? And I was like, yeah. And then I found out that she did. And I remember literally seeing her. That was probably the closest thing I'd felt to love at first sight, was this, a 10-year-old boy. And I remember I got my mum to get me a phone, and I begged and pleaded. I'd never had a phone, but I got one just so I could text to my new girlfriend at this point. And I remember sat there just waiting for my phone to buzz to see the message. And 3 days later, one of her friends came up to let me know that I was being dumped and she was going out with another boy now.
Oh my gosh. That's brutal.
And I remember stood there trying to pretend like I didn't care and just feeling this knife in my chest and trying not to cry in front of people. And yeah, that happened. And then I guess a similar story, pretty much the same thing, as you do in school, but the friends coming up when I was 15. We were together 3 days, and then I got another friend come over to let me know it was over. I never thought of that as an issue, right? But then I don't think I've ever felt love like I did in those 3 days when I was 10 years old. I've definitely not felt anything that intensely, and I don't know if that's just because you feel things that much more intensely when you're a child, or if perhaps the trauma from that 3-day relationship is something that now I carry with me.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, imagine your very pure expression of love and how you felt it and how you experienced it very quickly without judgment as a child. You're just like, this is how I feel and I want to feel more of it. And then it gets taken away from you just days later. And then you said that you tried to stop yourself from crying in front of other people, right? So already there you put a lid on emotions, and you teach yourself, or society really teaches you, that that's not okay to feel that. And so that's a block. And that's something that we can laugh of, these 3-day things or childhood stuff, or like it was just a small thing in class, but they can often be the sources of healing stuff as grown-ups, which is very cool, I think. And it's often where we go also with the people that I work with. We always end up going back to childhood, especially from even younger, like before 7 years old, because then you're very, very open. And everything you experience is just programmed into you.
Definitely. And we do belittle it, right? If you ask someone how many partners they've had, you're talking post 17 or 18. Anything before that doesn't really count. You're feeling love at 10 years old, that doesn't count. You don't know what love is, but perhaps it counts more than it does now.
Yeah.
Because it's so formative.
For sure. It's so pure. And it's so scary.
Maybe I need to grieve that 3-day relationship.
Maybe you'll find some relief in going there.
But yeah, that's the sort of thing that you say aware. Again, that's only something that I've started unpacking in the last couple of months as well.
And I think that relationships are one of the biggest vehicles for healing and growth. Because you go into a container with someone, a space, and if it's a traumatic space, then it will trigger everything, and like it can even traumatize you even more. But if it's a healing relationship, then you can find that conversations or just moments or allowing emotions to come up and vulnerability to heal a lot of things that happened in childhood. And then, yeah, the beauty of that and growing together is one of the best things about relationships, but also the most challenging, because we don't want to go there, right? We just want to be happy. We don't want to go into the deep stuff all the time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
You taught me something the other day, a phrase that I haven't heard of, called trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Would you mind explaining that again, what it is, how it manifests itself in the early stages of a relationship?
Yeah. So, well, this is just a theory that people talk about and that I find very interesting. And what we talked about was that sometimes you can meet someone and it is very passionate. It is very quick. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of emotions. And it can be what is called like a trauma connection, where you meet both in your trauma, you meet in your pain. Sometimes it can lead to a lot of healing, but sometimes it is a connection that happens because of that opening that both people have. I don't know if you also know about attachment styles.
Only started learning about them in the last couple of months.
Yeah, sometimes you can have, for example, an avoidant person attaching with an anxious person. And that can be a very hard trauma to have, because the avoidant person will try and escape and the anxious person will like hook on even more. And it feels like a nightmare for both. And then we have the other like type of relationships where we aim to be is in the secure attachment, where both feel safe, where both feel safe to express, to be, to change, to grow, to, you don't want to flee, but you don't want to like try and hold the other person so hard that they will never leave you. And sometimes it's said that those more secure, more, not necessarily long-term, but more secure and more, some people call them more boring relationships, that they happen over time, that you start out with a friendship and then slowly it turns out to be more interesting, and then it turns out to be that you find that there's actually love and a deeper connection there. And I'm not saying that this is the case. Sometimes you can have a passionate, fiery start and then grow into secure attachment. It really depends on every person and how you choose to grow also and change. But I love attachment theory also. I think it's really great for relationships. Yeah, I think I just love talking about relationships. It's so interesting. You can just see the whole life through that.
It is so interesting. And you have so many different relationships and friendships as well. And Dale is definitely an avoidant. I've definitely been an avoidant. And
yeah, I was too.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed is I want to create that safe space for people and have these deep conversations on a romantic front. But I feel like I'm such a flight risk based on my own past issues that I know it's not a safe space for them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
And I want to give that. I want to be like, open up to me. Let's bond. Let's be deep. But also, don't come near me. I'm bad news.
Yeah, exactly. And that's hard. But that's when I like to take it to the next level. And what I mean by radical honesty is saying both of those things. Having that entire conversation. Saying both that you feel like you want to open up and go deeper, but also that you're actually scared that you're going to run away. And when the other person gets to know that, wow, then you actually build a connection. And then we so often in relationships think that the other person knows what we're thinking, knows what we're feeling. We try and hint, we try and nudge. We totally forget that we're so different people. So one of the biggest things for me to learn these things and to build an amazing relationship is to fully express what I'm thinking and feeling as I'm speaking it to someone who doesn't understand me. And not with being like preachy or anything, but yeah, because you can understand the complexity of yourself to a certain degree, but a person that you're just getting to know, they need to be explained how you feel, how you are, and then it's more fine, right? Whatever happens, then you have been yourself and there. And if, okay, you go into the old pattern again of flight and running away, then you have talked about it. And maybe it can lead to a new conversation of, okay, what happened here? You're trying to run away. Do you want to talk about it again? What triggered you? You know, and then you can rebuild.
I love that point about assuming what your partner thinks or knows.
Yeah.
There's an expression that unspoken expectations are predetermined resentments.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
It's if you expect something of someone, if you expect them to know that you operate in a certain way, but you haven't actually shared that with them, in your head, if they then do something which is contrary to productive with handling that, you're going to feel like you've been let down because you just assumed that they knew.
Exactly.
It's better to over-explain your emotions, your expectations, your needs than to under-explain them and just hope that you're understood.
Yeah, for sure. I like to remind myself that we need to express not just like expectations and what we don't want, but actually our desires. How do we want it to feel? How do we desire to be treated on the highest level? And then, yeah, as you say, that resentment that can build up and can go off like a bomb, that is so unhealthy and so hard for both people, because both people get really disappointed, right? And one feels like it's just being watched and like judged from afar without knowing what was going on or what the context was. And the other person is just like, yeah, has a huge expectation of how someone is going to behave, and then like is almost standing there taking notes of the failures. And yeah, that's when I believe that we need to pause and also take so much responsibility. I'm a very big believer of that too, like never pushing and pointing fingers. You point one finger out and you point like 5 fingers back and look at yourself, what you're doing, because it's so easy to blame and to shame others and to, especially in relationships, like they're the problem or they're doing this, so that's why I'm doing that and that's why I feel this way. And if we can look back at ourselves and take responsibility, we can see that it's not what they're doing that's making me feel this way. It's this experience that is triggering this thing in me. And then an opportunity to express it and to really get a new perspective.
Get to the bottom of it as well,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you just are pointing fingers and blaming, you're not really going to get to the root cause there. There's going to be a reason for everything. And especially if you're in a healthy relationship otherwise, where you know you're both on the same team overall, I guess it goes back to that unblocking, right? It's working out what the root cause of everything is and then trying to solve it.
Yeah. And there's also nothing more unsexy than nagging, right? There's nothing that can just take the passion flame out of like day to day, like you didn't clean up this, or especially now that we are also parents, that can be, that's not good.
Can I talk about what I was saying to you earlier just after brunch?
Yeah
Absolutely. In your personal relationship with Dale, I've been staying with you for a couple of days, and you have a wonderful, gorgeous young boy, but he's been having a tough couple of days. He's been feeling some things, and he's been making sure that you both know about it.
Yes.
And both of you have been stressed. Both of you have had bad night's sleep, and both of you have been trying to deal with some situations which can only be described as a bit chaotic. And both of you have not expressed yourselves in the calmest of ways in that moment. But what I've noticed is that both of you have given each other the room to express that in that moment. You might have both said something a little bit snappy whilst trying to stop him from crying.
Yeah.
But each time that that's happened, because it has been on both sides, the other person has received it without biting back and making the situation worse. You give each other that safe space to be a little bit shitty for a second and express it. And I've been sat there thinking, I would not be able to handle this whole situation this smoothly. And
it's like a case study that you come to see.
Literally, like Gail said to me after brunch, she's like, so what does this make you think about having kids?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm very happy for you.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
I think it's a testament to the safe space that you've created for each other on the broader picture, that even in moments of chaos, you both know it's still there.
Yeah. There's a lot of love in the foundation and understanding and knowing that we can get stressed. We both have our own businesses. We have a lot going on. Sometimes we don't rest enough. And it can lead to those. It's funny that you say it, because sometimes I don't even notice it myself that we're a bit snappy, and I think that we're always like good to each other, and of course we're not. But sometimes we quickly resolve it. Sometimes we have to talk about it at the end of the day, or when things. I don't like to talk about stuff in the heat of the moment. I like to come to neutrality, to see it from perspective, then talk about it. But we know each other really well. We know what triggers each other. And especially today, like Dale was extra tired and
a little bit hungover.
And I also have had Luca more than him, so I felt a bit of that imbalance. And then it can lead to me feeling like a bit bitter, resentful of not being seen or not being appreciated. And then back to that expectation thing that we talked about, like I can be expecting him to just know that now he needs to thank me, now he needs to make sure that I feel like I've been a great mom or something like that. And if he's in his own world and thinking about other stuff, then I can let myself be disappointed. And then I tell him, like, okay, again, back to the him being able to read my mind. We have to talk about it. But that is part of a bigger pattern that we have going on. Like one of my patterns has been people pleasing, and because I'm very emotionally aware of how other people are. So it's very natural for me to just try and go and soothe that and try and make sure that they're okay. And to a certain extent, just put myself a bit last. And as a mother, that can be very, very unhealthy, because the extra challenges that you face, and if you never put yourself first, and if you never tend to yourself, then you become this archetype of victim.
No one wants that.
No, you don't want that yourself. It's horrible to be in a victim mentality, and it's horrible for other people. Yeah, when people just feel super sorry for themselves, it's just like, oh.
And that is what's the word used? An energy vibe, right? Where it will then attract more of it as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
But I think it's beautiful what you guys have built, because I know how much I would need something like that in a long-term successful relationship, because I know that maybe it's part of my star sign, but I'm quite fiery, and especially in a moment I can feel a split second of anger, and it can come across in my tone. But if that was met with the warmth of reception that you guys are able to give each other, and give each other that safe space for that second, I know that it would immediately be gone, and I would appreciate being given that space to have that outburst.
Yeah.
I had a partner 3-4 years ago. And it was the one that I thought, oh, this could be something serious. It was the most intellectual person I'd paired with. I found her very physically attractive, and on paper it ticked all the boxes. And this was why I wanted you to bring up the trauma bonding again, because it was the most intense 2-month thing before it blew up with a bang. Like it was amazing. I was projecting everything forward, and then it blew up with a bang. And I think one of the biggest things was I didn't give her the space to be emotional in her responses, and I wasn't given it for me. So if I had a moment in the supermarket where something slightly annoyed me, and bloody thing, and then it was met with, why have you got to be like that? And, it's heightened. Rather
it's
than
like a lighter under the gas.
Literally, it was both of us are too hot-headed and weren't able to give that space. So I think that's one thing that I know now is so important to me, which I'd never even considered as something at that time.
That's so interesting. So you know more what you're looking for also now, or what you need?
More about what I need. Still no idea what I'm looking for.
No, okay. But I think, if I'm right, I'm no astrology expert, but I think Gemini is an air sign. And that tends to be a bit more, like my son, he's an Aries. He's very fiery energy. He's like, it's a lot of, it's intense and can get hot-headed.
Tell me a bit more about your work.
Yeah.
Tell me what you do and why you do it.
Yeah, so I lead a self-development universe and community. I do it because it's my biggest passion in life, and I love to see other people grow. And it falls very naturally to me, and I'm very much of a community person. So I do host retreats here in Portugal. I've hosted 2 so far, and it's been one of the best things that I've done in my career, with the amazing results that we've seen also. And then I host an online membership. So it's a weekly online meeting point for spirituality, for self-growth, for all of the topics we talked about today, really getting to know yourself so that you know that you can grow. And it's all about community, because I believe that we don't grow, well, we do, but we grow more and healthier in togetherness and community. And feeling seen even in your pain can be one of the best things. And then I have a podcast also, and social media and all the things that come with it. And we also have it sounds like so many things, but we have an online shop for wellness products. So that's what I do.
And if people want to keep up with that, if they feel inspired by what you've spoken about today and want to reach out, where can they find you?
They can find me, I think, easiest to connect on Instagram at Radical Broccoli. And my own personal Instagram is Susi Bast.
I'll put both links in the description below so people can find you easily.
Yeah.
Susi, thank you not just for being on the podcast, but for being perhaps the best thing that's happened to one of my best friends.
Thank you so much.
I know it's still a work in progress, but you're doing a great job so far. And thank you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.